Hi, everybody. My name is Cole Smith. This is the first episode of the Cole Smith podcast. We're going to see if we can keep that name or if we're going to update it to something a little bit more entertaining than just my name. This is the first episode, though. And for those who know me, I've been writing about the Vikings for a long time. I've been rooting them on even longer than that. I've been kind of a psycho about them since I was little, younger than most people when they get into their sports fandom. I've been writing about the Vikings since about 2017. Um, Most notably, I've been writing for Purple PTSD and VikingsTerritory.com. I've also been writing for ZoneCoverage.com and VikingsWire.com. And today I figured that the best way to start the first podcast is kind of touch on what I wrote about today for Vikings Wire, which was a on the Mount Rushmore of Vikings players since the 2000 season. It was written for the Bleacher Report. They went through all 32 teams, and we're not going to go through all 32 teams today. We'll go through the Vikings, who made it, why these guys made it, and then also go through some possible snubs because even though the Vikings haven't won or reached a Super Bowl in a long time, especially since 2000, they have had a lot of good players. And um, that shouldn't be held against them. I mean, they're the four players who were chosen for this Mount Rushmore are worthy. I think two of them are slam dunks, and I don't think it's necessarily wrong that two of the other two made it, but I do think that there was at least one other player who should have made it. And I don't think anybody would have an issue with that. But having that player on also opens a can of worms because there's another player who could be vying for a spot if we opened up um, the voting or decision-making process for that. So the Mount Rushmore today, as everybody knows, it's for four players. Um, it's kind of ambiguous how people want to go about it. Is it tenure? Is it stats? Is it just impact? It kind of all, it encapsulates all that to a certain point. Well, I'll just list the four players who were named. Um, Adrian Peterson, of course, who played for the Vikings from '07 to 2016. Kevin Williams, who played from 2003 to 2013. Jared Allen, who was with the team from '08 to 2013. And Harrison Smith, who was drafted in 2012 and still playing with the team. So at first glance, it's a really solid Mount Rushmore regardless. Um, you got two guys who are absolutely in the Hall of Fame. Adrian Peterson will be inducted first ballot when he's eligible in 2 years, and Jared Allen, who is going to get voted in this year. Um, Adrian Peterson, pretty obvious, fifth all time in rushing yards, Vikings all time leader in rushing, and won MVP in 2012. He carried that team with Christian Ponder and drug him to the playoffs. Was within striking distance, 8 yards shy of Eric Dickerson's single season rushing record when everybody knew that he had to run the ball. Even that last game to get them into the playoffs, he needed 208 yards to break the record, and everyone knew he was going to run. And he still torched the Packers for 199 yards, including the run that set up the game-winning field goal that Blair Walsh almost missed. He's a slam dunk, easiest choice on the list. He's got the tenure. He was a face of the franchise for many years, probably his entire career with the team. And we can kind of tear him apart, for how his career ended and, how his personal life has kind of derailed since he retired, but that doesn't impact his on-field Tenure with the Vikings absolutely shouldn't be a factor in this. I think Peterson's pretty easy. Not really going to touch on it any more than that because he's the biggest slam dunk on the list. The second guy on the list, too, I think is an absolute non-negotiable, as I wrote in my piece, was Kevin Williams. He was drafted in '03, and that was a very odd time for the Vikings. I was in the middle of the Red McCombs era, kind of near the end, where everything was very cheap with how the team was run. Coaching staff was lowest paid in the league. Defense wasn't very good. That team started out 6-0, ended up 9-7. That's a whole other discussion. But despite that defense not being super great, Kevin Williams was a stud from the get-go. He had 10 and a half sacks as a rookie, 11 the next season as a defensive tackle. He played some defensive end, but he was a force even before the Vikings defense got good when Mike Tomlin arrived in 2006 and when Leslie Frazier ran the defense from '07 on through Williams's tenure. Equally disruptive against both the run and pass. With Pat Williams, Kevin helped the Vikings have the best run defense in the league each year from 2006 through 2008. And in 2009, they were still second in the league in run defense. Five-time first team All Pro. That all came in 6 seasons. Dude had 4 defensive touchdowns, which is insane for a defensive tackle. He should have had 5, but one was called back against Dallas in '07. Watch it on YouTube. It's a crazy clip. He ends up having to have a lot of oxygen after the play because it was like an 80-yard return or whatever. I think he's non-negotiable. I think he should have been a first team or first ballot Hall of Famer. I think that he was just so quiet, personality wise. His name wasn't exactly crazy, like Albert Haynesworth or, something cool. Kind of just he just went about his business, but in doing so, he was one of the best defensive players I've ever seen for the Vikings. With my own eyes, I'm 32, so only caught the end of John Randall. Obviously, I wasn't around for the Purple People Eaters with Alan Page and um, even Keith Millard and those guys. So I think those two are absolutely safe. No issue with that. I can't see how anybody would have any issue if they saw those two players play. Jared Allen is third. I really don't even have an issue with him. He only played 6 seasons, and even though the Vikings championship window truly opened in 2009 with Favre arriving, because of his personality and his talent, I think that Jared Allen kind of helped usher in that kind of energy and production in a smaller but not insignificant way in '08. The Vikings had a very solid defense for several seasons before he arrived. Um, Adrian Peterson became the face of the franchise on offense and, face of the franchise, that encapsulates the entire franchise. But on defense, there wasn't a ton of personality. Like I said, Kevin Williams was fantastic, but wasn't very outspoken. Jared Allen kind of changed the attitude and public perception of how the Vikings defense and their personality was. And that does play a part in how offenses attack teams. Had, you know, great seasons. I don't think any of them was better than 2011. He had 22 sacks, even though that team was 3-13. Uh, that team didn't play with a ton of leads after the first few games of the season. So there wasn't a whole lot of just pinning his ears back and getting after the quarterback like in 2009, somewhat 2008. He was just a vocal leader. and great guy in the community, beloved by all fans. Um, I don't really have an issue with him being on the list. He did only play 6 seasons with the team. That's the most he played with any team during his career. I don't have an issue with that, but that's something to think about when we talk about guys who are snubbed. Final player on the list is Harrison Smith. He's going into his 14th season. This is probably going to be his last season. A lot of people, including me, thought that last year might have been it. The way that he cried and was emotional after the wild card loss to the Rams. Smith is a lot like Kevin Williams, I think, perception wise, and that everybody knows he's good. I just don't think people outside of Minnesota truly appreciate how good and know just how good and versatile Smith is against both the run and pass, both even on in the pass in coverage and blitzing. He's one of only 6 players in league history with 20, at least 20 sacks and at least 35 interceptions in his career. He's the NFL's active interceptions leader with 37. Um, Again, I don't have an issue with him really being on this list. I think that all 4 of these guys are absolutely worthy of being on a list like this. Smith has tenure. He has weirdly only one first team All Pro, but he's been to numerous Pro Bowls, leader on the defense. He'll absolutely be a Ring of Honor guy. I think he should be in the Hall of Fame. I don't know if he will, unless the Vikings can get to the Super Bowl and win one this year. But all that being said, Adrian Peterson, Kevin Williams, I think non-negotiable, have to be on here. Jared Allen probably should be on here. Harrison Smith, I don't really have an issue with him being on here. The 2 players who are snubbed, the one major snub is pretty obvious. It's Randy Moss. Now, if this is just going since 2000, Mount Rushmore since 2000, I think I said that initially. Um, but if I didn't say that, that should maybe clarify some of the confusion. But Moss was drafted in 98, so a lot of his production came in 98 and 99. And he was only with the team from 98 to 2004 with a brief stint in 2010. So he kind of gets dinged by the Bleacher Report article for that. Um, so he only played 77 regular season games um, in his first stint with the Vikings from 2000 to '04. But the production's still off the charts. He led the league in receiving yards and touchdowns. I know he at least had touchdowns. I think he had receiving yards too in 2003, with over 1,600 yards and 17 touchdown receptions. He should be on the list, I think. It just feels weird not to have him on the list because he was the face of the franchise. Um, the the offense continued to produce even when Dante Culpepper wasn't playing in like 2001. He missed some time in '03. Um, Guys like Gus Farrat and Todd Bauman continued to see some success, actually a lot of success, in a short period of time on the field with Moss. Um, I don't think that should be ignored, even though he only played 77 games then. It's hard to count that 2010 season just, as making or breaking him on a list like this. And it was such a blip with just how that season was altogether and how Brad Childress handled that team and the Moss situation in general. Um, the issue is that he should be on the list, I think. I could see bumping Allen or Smith out. I Allen only played one more season than Moss, so maybe he'd be the one to bump out. Even that feels weird once you really start looking at it. The issue is that Justin Jefferson's actually played the same amount of games as Moss did from 2004 and 77 total games. So if Moss should be on the list, then should Justin Jefferson be on the list? And then, should Moss and Jefferson be over Allen and Harrison Smith? Like it's hard to put Moss on here and not have Jefferson. I think it's impossible to put Jefferson on here and not put Moss. And honestly, until you start looking at the stats and comparing them side by side, it's actually kind of hard to believe that Moss played as many games in the 2000s decade as Justin Jefferson has so far with the Vikings through 5 seasons. So maybe this is a correct list to have Peterson, Williams, Allen, and Harrison Smith. It feels weird leaving Randy Moss off, but if you start really digging, it's hard to keep Justin Jefferson off. If you include Moss, then I think that you're going off too small of a sample size, even though Jared Allen still only played 6 seasons. Um, it's really a testament to how good this team has been, despite the lack of hardware and being able to get over the NFC Championship hump. A few other guys who you really can't argue them to be on the list because it'd be hard to get them over any of these 6 guys, but deserve honorable mentions. Steve Hutchinson, who played from '06 to 2011. He was the big trade through this transition tag, the poison pill, back in Brad Childress's first offseason with the team in '06. Hall of Famer a few years ago, leader among the offensive line. I think that he absolutely deserves some sort of mention for a list like this. Even if he didn't play a super long time, the 2011 season, his body was starting to fail him some. So we got 5 awesome seasons out of him. I know offensive linemen aren't usually gonna get as much recognition as they should in lists like this. But I think that we already have 2 guys on the trenches here, and we have a safety. I think that it's a pretty well-rounded list, as is. I think Antoine Winfield should deserve a mention on here too. He played from '04 to 2012 and was a lot like Harrison Smith as a safety in that he was equally great against the run and pass, and he could blitz while covering, or he could blitz and cover. Um, and he had some games where he just absolutely took over and spearheaded victories. 2010 at Philadelphia comes to mind. 2008 Monday night at New Orleans comes to mind as well. Even right before that in '08 against the Panthers at the Metrodome, games where he caused game-changing turnovers and really carried the team when the rest of the team, the offense especially, might not have been doing everything they could in their power to win those games. So I think he deserves to be on there or to be mentioned. It's still crazy that he got released so that the Vikings could justify putting Josh Robinson at slot cornerback the year after. Um, so I think that's pretty much who I've got for that list. Um, I think it's a very solid list that people can poke holes into. I think ultimately the Bleacher Report article probably got it right. Um, I really would not have an issue if Moss was on this list at all. But like I said, if Moss is on it, how is Justin Jefferson not? And it's really hard to truly have an issue with a guy like Jared Allen or Harrison Smith being on a Mount Rushmore the past 25 years for the Vikings because of how productive they were, how revered they were by fans and coaches and teammates alike. Obviously, Moss didn't always have that universal love. I don't think that should be held against him. It's more just it's really hard to take out Jared Allen and Harrison Smith, I guess is all I'm trying to say. Um, Especially for guys who didn't play or haven't played more than 5 seasons with the team. So that's the list. That's the first episode. Probably try having something else before training camp begins. And we're just going to try having a good time, kind of looking at lists like this before the season gets started. Start kind of getting into stats, kind of start looking at position battles as camp gets going. I really just want this podcast, the show to be something that I personally would be seeking out. I think over the years when I've thought about doing stuff like this, I've looked at how other podcasters do things and maybe tried overthinking how to make myself more like them. I think that just doing something that I like might be better for an audience. So I want it to be fun. I want it to be analytical, when need be. I just want to be able to touch on everything, you know, um, at how I would the stuff that I enjoy looking at throughout the off season, throughout the season, throughout the playing week, having the discussions, debates, um, and not trying to take just everything that the social media and media gives us at face value. Maybe try digging a little deeper than just box score stats or one great highlight. um, you know I can't say I'm an expert at film study, but I do enjoy watching all 22 film. I can't say I'm an expert with analytics, but I enjoy consuming those kind of statistics. So, all that being said, I want to be able to look at all that stuff like a fan, because I truly enjoy watching the games. I don't think you might be surprised, not every single podcaster and writer that covers the Vikings or any team, not they don't actually all like the team that they cover as much as you'd expect. Some of that is affected by them just covering the team um, over the years, so it becomes more of a job. And For me, I've just always been so into the team. And even though this hasn't ever been a full-time gig for me, I think that my passion for the Vikings and for football has actually grown every single year since I become, writing, a writer for them. Now I'm, jumping into this avenue for them. Um, I don't know if it's because I still try seeking out new stuff. I find learning about the game, the history of the game, and everything super interesting. And Yeah, I just want to pass that on to you. And if I can learn about something and help you learn about something that you never knew about, or offer a perspective that you never thought about, I feel like I've done my job. And Yeah, I hope this is the first of many episodes. And I hope that this becomes fun. Hopefully, maybe I'll think of a better podcast name for this. Maybe it'll become a little bit more entertaining once I start figuring out what works, what doesn't work, getting comfortable in front of a camera, and possibly even having guests on. Maybe other Vikings fans. I have a cousin who's a Bears fan who could offer that kind of perspective, that he's pretty stupid. So we'll see what goes on with that. But that might drive views actually. Maybe it make it kind of like a first take sort of thing with Stephen A and Skip Bayless. But so that's the podcast, guys. Hope you guys have a good weekend. And yeah, we'll see you next time.